Good afternoon, live from the island of Kauai. These are CANversations brought to you by the Spirit of Can. My name is Seth Womble. Today we are going to have a conversation with an unreal cyclist named Matt Shackley. And rather than me go into him, I'm going to let him do it himself. So going live with me now in Las Vegas, I believe, but we'll let him confirm that. Yeah, buddy.
What's
Where
up?
did my camera go? How's it going?
You've disappeared. Are you still
I
there?
don't know. That's weird. Yeah, hold on.
What's up, man? How are you doing?
There we go. Very well. Thank you. This is a great part of the day. I get to sit down.
Yeah. I was just, my hair's still wet. I was out riding my bike myself. So
Oh, you freshened up for us. Thanks.
I
Yeah,
did.
I didn't
Yeah.
didn't even shave my cheeks for you. Sorry, dude.
Yeah, I was out riding this afternoon because I knew it would be on here. And yeah, just trying to get a ride in every day. I've been on kind of a roll recently. So
These are some things we're definitely going to talk about, and straight into it, you're already highlighting something that you do to make sure that you're in the right state of mind to go through the rest of life. Sounds like to me.
yeah, I started riding bikes when I was like 12 years old. Um, got into racing when I was like a teenager. And then it's just something I've kind of always done since then. I kind of had to transition away from racing in my early 20s, get a real job. Um,
You didn't cut your hair though.
no, the hair's recent actually. The hair's kind of a recent thing. Um, but yeah, but I've always ridden bikes, and then after racing, I sort of had to figure out like what was next in terms of cycling. Um, and a couple of years ago, I guess the end of the year, and I realized that I felt like I'd barely ridden that year. I looked at like my data, and it was like a couple hundred days of riding, which I guess sounds like a lot, right? Like I think
Depends on your standards. Yeah, but that sounds like a lot to me.
it translates to like 5 days a week. Uh, but I was more bummed that was like 2 days a week where I was doing nothing, right? So I made the goal the next year to do something, exercise some way, like 6 days a week. Um, so that next year started. I think that was 2018. That was 2 years ago. And that January, I went through like all of January, 31 days straight, and I rode every day. And I was like, oh crap, maybe I'll just keep going like this, right? Instead of 6,
Yeah.
let's see if I can do every day. And we're going on like 2.5 years now, and I've ridden my bike or gone for a run every day, pretty much. Or
Amazing.
exactly every day, yeah.
And in doing that, obviously you set an incredible goal for yourself, and without that drive, you're not going to be able to get through that kind of a goal, let alone keep the goal going. We'll probably talk about it a little bit later on, I guess, but there had to have been days where you woke up and you're like, I don't feel like doing this right now, but what'd you do?
Early on, for sure. It just becomes a habit after a while, though. Like now, it's not even a question. I know everyone says that. Like, I don't be that meathead guy who's like, "Oh, just exercise every day. It's not that hard, right?" I do it. Um, but it really does become a habit, and now it's just part of my daily routine. And
Yeah.
it's a question of like whether I'm gonna ride or run. So it's just like making time for it in my schedule.
Yeah.
So we're
Yeah.
only days. Like there was one day last year in February. I used to live in Las Vegas, and it snowed in Vegas for the first time in a long time. And I don't know, I hopped on my bike and I rode to work because that was just kind of what I was doing at that time. So,
Well, I mean, who could say they rode their bike to Vegas in the snow? That's
right?
kind of cool too.
Make for some cool pictures, that's for sure.
Amazing. Okay, so you said let's go back a little bit in time here really quick. You said you used to live in Vegas. Where were you born, and how did you get to wherever it is that you are now?
So I was born in England, actually. I was born,
Okay.
moved to the United States pretty much when I was 6 years old. My dad was in the Royal Air Force, the British Air Force, and they sent us to Las Vegas. And then eventually we ended up kind of settling in Vegas and staying in Vegas permanently. Um, and that's pretty much where I grew up. Uh, I left a little bit for college, went back, but pretty much spent most of my life in Vegas until recently. About 6, 7 months ago, my wife and I moved to Santa Barbara, California.
Oh, okay, cool.
Grad school now, yeah.
Gotcha. That explains. Yeah. Okay. So you're in school. What have you been doing? Because it sounds like a not your basic Easy stuff.
Yeah. I know Andy's told you a little bit about it. Andy's pretty stoked on all the education stuff for sure.
Yeah.
So before I came here, I was actually a teacher. I taught middle school science, and I know I'm not supposed to look at the chat, but I see some of my students are actually down there.
It's hard not to. It's okay. It's usually pretty good stuff. So
Yeah, I got a public Instagram profile, which might not be the smartest. So some of my people follow me.
that just forces you to be more authentic. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, and I don't know. There's like this is a little bit of a side thought for a minute, but some people are kind of like anti having those relationships with your students outside of school. But I think as long as you're conscious of setting a good example, trying to set a good example,
Yeah.
I think it can be really powerful. I think, obviously there's a line where you don't want to say or do anything that's going to maybe be a bad influence on them. But I like to see myself as more than just a teacher, but also
Yeah.
or I tried my best to be also like a mentor.
100%. I don't think that there really should be anything too weird about that. We're lucky in the Hawaiian Islands because for the most part there is a level of respect where people that are teachers that are not related are considered an auntie and uncle. So I teach music, art lessons, and scuba stuff like that. And here, when you interact with the community, you see your kids from class out at the grocery store because it's a small community. Maybe you don't hug or anything like that, but there's definitely acknowledgement, and that's okay. I think that it's good to always be the same person that you are, no matter where you are. If you're teaching, you shouldn't have to change roles and all of a sudden be this person, because if they catch you out of that, kids are smart. They're going to know you're a hypocrite. And I learned those lessons when I was really young, and I got kind of bitter towards adults, so.
Definitely. It's cool. I think maybe it's a little different vibe there too, because, smaller community and you're more likely to see people out and about. Vegas is a pretty big city, so it's easy to go to work and be a teacher and then go home and be somewhat different. But I tried to be I tried my hardest, at least, be my authentic self in the classroom and also carry that to outside of school too and be a good role model. So.
It's interesting. It shouldn't really be hard to be ourselves, but that's kind of one of the hardest things in life, is to find out who you are and then just be good with that, and then do good things for others so that they can be themselves and be good at themselves too. It's kind of one of the tiers of the CAN hierarchy that this whole thing's based on, the Maslow's pyramid, where looking after yourself so that you can be that authentic self, so that you can then go on and be productive in life and help others be productive too. That's really as simple as it is. So
yeah, I know Andy and I have talked kind of a lot about that, and I actually wasn't aware of Maslow's hierarchy until he showed it to me for the first time. But yeah, it's interesting to think about not just satisfying your basic needs, right, but figuring out your identity, who you are, who you want to be, and then what role you can play as that identity in your community.
Yeah. Well, so it sounds like you had a little bit of a shift, as a lot of people do as they grow through life and go through difficult experiences. There's the opportunity to grow or to kind of be stunted by that thing for however long. Often we have to go through some lessons over and over again until we really learn. But I wanted to, what we typically talk about in these things is how you had to adjust. But you've got such interesting stories that I don't really want to harp on coronavirus stuff or anything like that, really. But also wanted to, before we go any further, for the folks that are watching, if you guys stick around, we're going to give away some CAN apparel at some point. We've got different things like this that we can send you no matter where you are. But the catch is you got to listen to what Matt's talking about here, and we're going to ask you a question later on. And if you're the first person to put the answer in the feed, we'll send you something in the spirit of CAN. So, yeah, what we typically talk about is what kind of changes you had to face going into these last few months. But I'd also really love to hear about the shift that you made from essentially, I guess, going for professional cycling towards more of an education-minded as well as personal journey.
Yeah. I think it kind of speaks a lot to what we were just talking about identity too, right? So I got my first road bike for my 13th birthday. A little bit before my 13th birthday, I started riding road bikes. And that was kind of right when Lance Armstrong was winning his tours. and he was a big hero, you know, and I wanted to be just like that.
Cycling just hit the limelight too, big
Huge.
time.
That was a lot
Yeah.
of people. That's not a unique story. I think a lot of people got into riding bikes then.
Yeah.
And then I kind of, through the local cycling community in Vegas, which was a really cool, like tight-knit community, got into racing when I was like 15, 16 years old. And that would be, I don't remember exactly, but that would be when I met Andy for the first time. Andy, who's
Okay.
and for anyone, I guess, who's not totally aware.
There you go.
So I was just a kid. And I don't think that Andy was my biggest fan at first. I think I was kind of like a very hyper-competitive, arrogant kid who thought I knew what I was doing, right?
Teenager.
He'd been around racing bikes for a long time at that point, I think. So eventually we ended up on the same team, though. That was when I was sort of like my late teens, early 20s. And that was when I was really pushing to be a pro cyclist, I guess. I guess I was never obviously a pro cyclist. I was like the highest level of amateur that you can achieve. I call myself like a pro dreamer. Like I wanted to be a pro cyclist. I acted like a pro cyclist.
He says elite amateur pro level.
There you go. I did some races where pros were in those races.
Okay, good.
But you know, cycling, like any type of racing, is an incredibly humbling sport because you know one guy wins. It seems kind of obvious to say, right? But like one dude wins, and there could be a field of 100+ other people, and they all don't win. And it's kind of reminds me of like Talladega Nights, right? Like if you're not first, you're last.
There's a lot of losers. I mean, that's the way it can be looked at like that, but yeah.
But it is incredibly humbling, right? Because you're working so hard, and you're most of the time you're not winning. So it sort of like humbled me and forced me to kind of look at what other things I liked and what other things I was interested in. And in my early 20s, I started to realize that I maybe didn't have it to be like a proper professional bike racer. And I was in college at the time, and I started substitute teaching. And one of the other guys on the team was still is a teacher, and had a lot of like great long conversations on long bike rides, and through subbing just sort of like fell in love with teaching, and ended up pursuing that path. And then once I was a full-time teacher, I sort of had this balance of still thinking that I could chase racing and trying to balance professional life too. And it kind of proved a challenge. And it was like this, like we were talking about earlier, like this identity shift, right? Going from like Matt, the pro bike dreamer to now like Mr. Shackley, the teacher.
I like it.
I didn't mean to ramble forever there. Sorry.
No, that's the point of this. We're having a conversation that we've capped with CAN on the front of it. So, yeah, no, it's okay. We're going to keep it real and talk freely. Honestly, it's okay. We're just avoiding politics and religion. That's about it. So do you want to highlight anything particularly coming into sort of modern day now, any particular shift or any hard hit that you took going into these last 2 months?
Yeah, I guess just sort of like to finish that story,
Okay.
After teaching, while I was teaching, I decided to pursue a PhD in education.
There you go.
Brought us to Santa Barbara. So right now I'm in my first year of a doctoral program in education with an emphasis in cognitive science. And I'm specifically looking at science education and how we can make science education more equitable, meaning like how we can get a more diverse population of students interested in science education. And in terms of coronavirus,
No, okay, stop. I didn't mean to. I totally segued left turn there. I want to stay on track with what you're talking about because I can really relate with what you're saying here. Even in our small community, there is a gap that's hard to bridge between adults, teachers, whatever you want to call them, mentors, and connecting with youth and getting them interested or getting them involved in things. I'm not a parent, but you hear parents complain, it's like pulling teeth to get them to do something. Generally speaking, I think with humans in general, it helps if you sort of spur the idea on as it's their own idea. You encourage their ideas and somehow get them involved that way. I don't know. So I'm curious to see or hear what your thoughts are on that, because to get youth involved in anything can be tricky.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's actually interesting because that's sort of the direction some of my research is going in. just in terms of using student experience to construct the learning process. I'm going to try to avoid like dense explanations, but basically,
That's okay.
the way we think of education usually, right, or the way we think of like science education in particular, like a lot of my colleagues are working on stuff where they think of science as, we use this word called the STEM pipeline, right? And it's this idea that like there's this pipeline from K to 12 education to college majors in science and then careers in science.
Okay.
And the idea is to get as many kids, a diverse population of kids as possible, into that STEM pipeline, because the thinking is in the future, more and more jobs, especially the good paying jobs, are going to be these science, technology, engineering, math careers, right?
Mm-hmm.
My problem with that is that we're only thinking about that pipeline in one direction.
It's linear.
Yeah. So we're thinking about, especially kids from a place like Kauai, I think it'd be a really good example, right? It's like, we're doing everything we can to try to convince these kids to pursue science careers, but that pipeline's only going in one direction. And without getting too ideological, it's like, where's the end point there, right? They're going to the big city, they're getting a big job, and they're separated from maybe the community that they came from. And I want to think about that pipeline as sort of bi-directional. So how can science, instead of being a culture that they join into, be something that they can appropriate to improve their own community? So rather than teaching just science for the sake of jobs, teaching science for the sake of community improvement.
Man, that's great. That's really interesting.
I said I wasn't going to get dense, and then I feel like
No. Yeah, I think we could do a whole nother episode just on this, really, because this is fantastic stuff. And I know we could probably find plenty of people out there that would be interested in trying to figure out how to help support something like this too. So,
and I think it's an interesting time right now. Like I've talked to some of my neighbors around here. We live right by the university in family housing, and there's a lot of people here who have young children. And obviously with the coronavirus, school's been out since March, right? And a lot of schools here, they're doing remote instruction. So they're giving kids stuff to do at home, and the kids have to get on Zoom. And the vast majority of people I've talked to, it's just a miserable process, right? School for a lot of kids is, I think, unengaging. It's like it's a chore, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
This
is no offense to institutions or teachers out there. This is just what he's saying is this pipeline has created this. It's supposed to have a flow to it, but essentially it's a stagnant thing that goes in one direction. And to be perfectly honest, I think youth now more than ever are kind of asking, what's the point? Especially now that things are definitely having to shift with all kinds of digital education, whatever. Now more than ever is a great time to come up with another creative process to engage. Education can be completely looked at from a different angle.
That's exactly the point, right? We should see this not as a chance to like recreate the same tired thing over Zoom, but to see this as an opportunity to maybe do something different.
Yeah.
And try to engage kids in a different way, for sure.
And particularly, like you said, places that are slightly more isolated, the Hawaiian Islands and things like that. I think a lot of youth here, they don't see a lot of potential for them to grow into a good job here where they live. So we pretty much lose our entire young population every couple of years to go and, see the world, which is important too. But a lot of them don't end up coming back.
That's actually interesting. Do you know, like, if there's no university on Kauai, right? Like, there's a community college.
There's a community college, yeah.
So if you go to college, you have to leave the island.
You do, which I absolutely, totally encourage that too. You can't just stay home your whole life. I think you got to get out and experience a few things out there to gain some perspective.
Definitely. But interesting to see like how many of those kids end up coming back, right, and bringing those skills back home to do something with them.
That would be interesting to figure out what those statistics would be like. I could be totally off, but it just seems like more and more, as far as, you can even look at it from an economics, housing market sort of a standpoint. It seems like a lot of the old families here are losing their older homes because families aren't coming back and taking care of them or picking up where they left off or anything like that. So
yeah, I think there's
a lot to that. What's that?
I think there's other factors that play there too, probably, but I know we're not supposed
100%. Yeah, you're right. Well, okay. So, how do we do this? How do we diversify this pipeline?
That's why I'm in school, dude. I'm trying to figure that out. If I had the answers, I'd be out there probably doing it.
Well, okay, so here's a perfect example of something, you guys that are listening, that is huge. This is a huge concept. This is a huge, potentially world-changing educational concept that's going to take a lot of creative thinking. Obviously, we can't sit here and just jot down some notes and have this thing rolling. So Matt here is having to chip away at this concept. How long have you been working specifically with the things that you're talking about right now?
Well, like I said, I've been this is my first year in grad school here.
Okay.
But I was lucky. I actually taught at a private school when I was teaching. So I wasn't maybe constrained in the same way that public school teachers might be by standards and standardized testing. And I had a little more freedom to try some different things. So yeah, I mean, I tried the last year I was teaching science. I was teaching 6th and 7th grade science. I instituted like this project thing, and the whole class, basically the whole grade, was based on, are you participating in finding something that interests you that we can use science to answer that question? And, it was bumpy because these are kids who are, trained from when they're 6 years old to like learn, test, get a gold star.
Yeah.
So to have the responsibility put back on them was startling for them. But as a teacher, like it was cool to see it work out a lot of the time, and
Yeah.
Giving them that freedom, sort of seeing them discover their own interests and see how science can work for them, not just be something that they have to buy into for a career alone.
It's tough when that's where you hit those bumpy parts, like you're saying, with connecting with youth and getting them to think for themselves a little bit, is they've been so programmed to jump through the hoops.
Definitely. Here I actually work with or at the moment I'm not doing it because of the virus, obviously, but we were working with the Boys and Girls Club here in Santa Barbara, or in Goleta. So the demographics here are sort of interesting. Santa Barbara is obviously a super affluent community in California. And Goleta, where our school actually is kind of the service, people who work in service for Santa Barbara proper. So it's a little bit lower income community, a little bit more diverse. Okay. And we have this program called Leafy, and we work with the Boys and Girls Club in Goleta. And we basically do environmental science education at Leafy, at the Boys and Girls Club in Goleta, a couple of days a week. And then also those kids from the community get to come to the UCSB campus, and we do stuff on campus with them here. And, a lot of getting a doctorate is a lot of like research-driven stuff, right? A lot of reading and writing and talking about ideas. But it's favorite part of the week every week, because we'd go down there and we had kids from 4th grade to like, I think 9th or 10th grade. And we just do different projects with them, but we'd kind of let their interests guide what we were doing.
Cool.
I bring it up because the hope is that like we can take informal settings like that and we can bring those into like the formal classroom. And hopefully we can like take the lessons that we're learning from projects like that and bring them into designing curriculum for, more traditional school-based science education.
Yeah. That sounds really great. Those are good, awesome projects. So has everything completely halted for you with your activity with the Boys and Girls Club right now?
Yeah, unfortunately, they totally shut down. Schools here, like I said, closed in March, so kids have been doing online school for a couple months now, which is obviously, there's an issue with like access there because not everyone has adequate internet. So basically, like school in terms of grades and stuff is finished, right? But they still hold things and have assignments and hold the virtual sessions for kids. For me personally, I feel like I really try to have like a positive outlook. I feel like my life hasn't really changed, at least not for, like, it's changed for the better, I think, in some ways.
I think that's been the truth for a lot of people. It's been very mixed bag of tricks across the board, for sure.
I think like it's your perspective, right? Like I think there's a lot of things there's things that I can't do, to bring it back to can and can't, right? There's things that I can't do right now that I would like to do. Like I'd like to work with the Boys and Girls Club still. but like there's other things that I am able to do now that maybe I didn't have the time for before. Like school stuff for me is all online. All my meetings are over Zoom, so naturally things go a little faster because no one wants to be staring at a computer for 8-9 hours a day. So I got a little more time to go ride my bike. Like I said before this, I went out like 1 in the afternoon on what's today, Wednesday, to go ride my bike. And
yeah.
can't really complain, right? Like in a lot of ways, life's good, but
Sure.
In a lot of ways, other people are struggling much more. So I don't like to sit here and dwell on like the stuff I can't do when a lot of people have it a lot harder than I do.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. Everybody's got a different pair of lenses that they're viewing things through on all fronts. And so it's good to be courteous to those that are around you. Have no idea what they're going through. And if it has been easier for some of us, maybe that makes it a good time for us to grow into learning how to help our community or those that are around us that are having a harder time.
Definitely.
I think that's, yeah. There's got to be otherwise there can't be a can. So it's not, we get a couple of people that like to be contrary to the spirit of CAN, but it's just because they're thinking this isn't about a positive movement or anything like that. It's perspective, like you said. And you can't do a doctorate degree in cognitive learning with these huge concepts in mind and think that you're just going to do it overnight. You've got to chip away at that. So instead of going, holy cow, this thing's too huge, I can't do it, you're going to go, I don't know how, but I'm going to try, and I'm going to start with this step. And that's what CAN is. It's making a plan. And that's the next thing we really like to highlight in these conversations a little bit is what kind of goals and stuff that you're setting forth coming through this period that might be different than before. But you said not much has changed for you.
Yes,
So
not a whole lot has changed.
Yeah.
I have a giant stack of books next to me, as you can see it. So I've been like compiling my summer reading list because I'm done with classes in a couple of weeks. So my goal at the moment is to read all those.
What have you got?
I got
Anything good?
Well, let me see if I can find something cool. I think this one's super cool. I started reading this the other day. It's
backwards there.
Oh, it's gonna be backwards, isn't it? I just almost flipped it like this to make it better. I'm in grad school. I can't figure out that's not.
It's all right. We use our brains for really important things, not Instagram.
Unless people have a mirror, it says "Small is Beautiful," and it's written by this guy E.F. Schumacher in like the 1970s, I think, and it's about localizing economies to make them more responsive to local needs rather than this continued like corporate globalization, which kind of disenfranchises the little guy, so to speak.
Oh man, can you say that one again? That could be really important for some of our friends out this way.
The book?
Yeah.
It's super. I mean, it's
Small is Beautiful.
Small is Beautiful.
Who's
by E.F.
the author?
Schumacher is the guy.
Okay, E.F. Schumacher.
Yeah.
I say that because, again, we're isolated, and these are unique issues to where we are, particularly being part of the United States still. A lot of our economy out here has been tourist-based, and a lot of people are having to face some tough issues with that and really consider how they can reestablish their business better with the local community. So there you go. There's a good reference point.
One good way you can do it is to stop buying crap off the internet. Stop going on Amazon, like I'm going to admit I got this off of Amazon, but I couldn't find it anywhere else. But
yeah, see?
Some of these books, like I've been trying to find like little online thrift stores, or thrift stores that will ship books. And some of these are like super old and beat up and have like other people's notes in them and stuff.
Oh, used books are great.
Definitely. Right. So try to shop local if possible. That's how you can improve your local community,
I've seen people set up little stands on the side of the road, like almost like a fruit stand, but instead they put books in there that you can take one, give one, whatever else.
Like a community library.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have those around here some places, like little community.
Cool.
Kind of like.
I think that's a great idea.
Put them in there when you're done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like to share, but I don't know.
Some of them I like to hold on to as well, and I read a book, sometimes a good book. I'll get around to it a couple times.
I got one more I want to share. Hold on. It's buried in there. This is like a fairly well-known book, I think. It's backwards, but it's called
Last Child in the Woods.
And it's about how kids don't play outside anymore, which I think is super relevant to Hawaii and science education and everything, and kind of speaks to what we were talking about before about, teaching from children's lived experiences, and using those as sort of the starting point for designing our curriculum. But if all you do is sit inside all day and play video games, then not a whole lot.
You're missing out on a lot.
Yeah.
Missing out on a lot. I have a cousin in Wyoming that's been working with a group that's been trying to basically do entire curriculums in the woods.
That's awesome.
Maybe I have to put you guys in touch or get some more information. She's a little elusive, hard to get a hold of, but apparently their programs are really successful.
Is it like a school, or is it just kind of like a informal education thing?
I literally think it's called like Children in the Woods or something like that, which sounds almost kind of creepy. So don't quote me on that one, but don't Google that. You might get something you don't want. Yeah, I'll find out. I'll find out, and I'll get you some information about that because it's pretty interesting. And I know that you're also trying to integrate cycle riding as well with getting kids involved in some things. Did you have something like that? I thought maybe I mixed that up with something else, but
that'd be cool. Oh, I mean, kind of. I had had this idea to work with what's it called? You ever seen those Strider bikes? They're like bikes for little kids where
there's no pedals. Yeah.
Sort of push, right? Apparently, they don't ride a bike because, like when you have training wheels, you kind of just lean on one of them, and it's like a trike, right?
Yeah.
So like the actual like pushing with your feet and then lifting your feet up teaches you.
You learn to balance. Yeah.
There's a program where they will donate them to a school in your area. Well, not donate. You have to raise the money, right? But they will give them and a PE program to a school in your area. And I was trying to get that going for a school here, but it's on the back burner for now.
Yeah.
We'll see. But yeah, it's cool. I mean, teaching kids to ride bikes is big, and it's obviously it speaks to all that like smaller community economics and stuff too.
Well, Andy's got something that says endorphin capture and expression of CAN experiment.
Andy's big on this thing where he thinks he's definitely right, where you have like your best ideas when you're out riding your bike.
We talked about it briefly when I interviewed him a week ago.
Oh, yeah?
Want to hear your perspective on it, because I think that is just fascinating.
Yeah. A couple of years ago, I got big into podcasts. So I ride my bike with like an earbud and have a podcast going. But sometimes I just switch it off and I just do some of my best thinking when I'm out there. And I think it's a combination, right, of like, there is something about like this rush of inspiration you seem to get when you're done working out super hard, but it's almost like meditation. One of my friends asked me the other day, like, are you into meditation? Because that's like, kind of an emerging thing for a lot of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think part of it is we're all just like constantly connected to something. Like we always have a phone or a TV or, a podcast going or something. And sometimes just being in silence and letting your body do some work kind of lets your mind wander. And I definitely find that, like, sometimes I'm reading something really challenging, but if I get on my bike and go out and ride and just think about it, it sort of synthesizes it for me, right? Like it lets me sort of figure out what I'm thinking, if that makes sense.
100%. I completely understand. This is a fascinating topic. We had mentioned a book even earlier when we just had a quick talk before we got on the feed here, but we'll get back to that in a second. That release of endorphins, all that stuff that happens more or less when you're exercising, or you get to a place where you're able to let go of everything else that's around you and you're in that moment. And you can do it through meditation. You can do it through endurance runners get it, cyclists, weightlifters get it, and people. Kitsch words, flow state is one of the really kind of the main ones for that freedom of thought that happens, that process when everything just melts away, and you don't have that connection to anything digital. And actually, I think that it's funny that we try to be connected with this thing, where the connection that we're really seeking is outside of all of that. It's around you. It's breathing right now.
Yeah, I keep coming back to community, right? Like your connection can be with your community. We hop on here and I'm like connecting with people I don't even know over the internet. But I might never meet them and they might never impact my life, or vice versa, right? When like there's people out there that I can connect with and that might need my help, or vice versa again. So yeah, definitely sometimes. I know again, this is like a trope that you hear a lot, but like, turn off social media, like put down your phone, go outside,
Yeah.
and
We would
experience.
love to encourage all of you guys to stop watching right now and go outside. You can watch this later if you have to, but no, it's so this ties into the idea that Andy had, but I don't know how much we should honestly be talking about it, because there could be, this is a really great idea. So with the essence is that we got all these tracking devices, but when we really get that moment of free thought, it's really hard to track that stuff. And it's not like in the middle of riding, a big distance, or while I'm out free diving at 60 feet down, I'm not going to take out my pencil and start writing down my thoughts or notes. Trying to conceptualize an idea of how to kind of track that stuff. Am I on the right track there?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a thought that Andy and I have talked about. I don't know if I really have an answer for that though. But yeah, like, I mean, we can track everything else, right? It would be interesting to, I don't know, to throw like one of those electrode caps on someone, right?
So I'm dying to know, have you played with one of those? What do they call it? Like a cognitive mind map sort of sensor cap? You got a name for it?
There's it's like ECG or something. I don't want to say that and be totally wrong, but
that sounds right. I think it's in that book that we were talking about, the Blue Mind book. He talks about them quite a bit.
Maybe it's EEG. I think ECG is your heart. EEG, and it's a cap, and it's got little electrodes, right? And they can sort of map what parts of your brain are firing at different times. It'd be super interesting to see, if something else is going on when you're out there, walking in nature or riding your bike or surfing or whatever else, right? Yeah, sometime in the future, we'll see.
So you've never tried one?
No time and resources.
Nobody's
wouldn't fit in head with all this hair, man.
You have to shave it,
huh? They do work, but no. Not something I've had access to yet. Like I said, I'm pretty early in the program here, so need a little more time before I can start asking for the big stuff.
Man, I've actually reached out and had some messages with the author William Nichols, Willis Nichols from the Blue Mind.
Yeah.
I think you're going to really dig that, because he just basically explores all of those concepts with those mind mapping caps, essentially, with relation to water, and not only being in the ocean, but in relation to being in a metropolis or a big city, just next to a fountain, or in a green space versus in an office. Like they've tested all of this stuff. There's fantastic information in there. It's really cool.
Yeah, we were talking about it earlier, right? About how that's kind of on my, it's not here, but it's on my list of books to read for sure. The Blue Mind, it's called. But they've also obviously, like you said, found a lot of correlation between like green space or access to nature, and lots of stuff too, right? Like not just learning, but mindfulness and just general, like mental health, well-being.
Yeah. So this is good for you guys that are listening. You don't have to be a cyclist that we're going to get into it here in a second, that goes entirely across country and does these things like multiple times, let alone goes out and does it every day. But there's got to be something that you can find that you can do to change your state of mind and get that kind of CAN spirit, or give yourself the space to shed everything away, get in the moment, and have some freedom of thought where creative things hit you. They really do. It's not bolts of lightning or anything like that. It's a natural process that happens. So for you, if you get wrapped up, you're having a tough time with something, easiest thing for you to do to clear your mind is go out and get some exercise. But it's strictly cycling.
For me, I've actually started playing ice hockey recently, which is pretty wild. Like, to move to Santa Barbara to learn to play ice hockey is kind of stupid. I probably should have taken up surfing or something, right? But I don't
know which one's safer actually out there.
I played a little roller hockey when I was a kid, my brother and I, and there's happens to be a rink right here by our house, and coming from Vegas, we're big ice hockey fans now because we got the Golden Knights the last couple of years. So yeah, they got like a men's beer league, and I was like, I'll hop in that and learn something new,
Wait, a beer league for hockey? What is that?
Well, they call it a beer league because after you have beers, right? Like,
Okay.
no one takes it too seriously. You get out, like, no one's very good.
I didn't know if you guys had like broomsticks and you were drinking the beers and then
uh,
using those as the pucks. You know, you never know. So just
beers,
checking.
yeah. But a couple beers after. I think, some of these guys, it's an excuse to get out there and have a couple beers more than it is to.
Nah, it sounds fun.
It's fun. It's fun. It's different because since moving here, like, I haven't done a great job of meeting people that I can ride bikes with. Whereas in Vegas, like, I had a great, like I said earlier, like, there's a great cycling community in Vegas, and I had, like, all right, my dog has decided to sleep all day, and then while I'm talking,
It's real life. It's okay.
yeah, like, I had an incredible support system in Vegas. Some really good friends that I could ride with on a consistent basis and, like, have conversations. So I think the other side of that coin, right, is it's great to get out there and, like, just let your mind think, but it's also really good to, like, have people you can have deep conversations with as well.
Yeah.
And cycling provided that for me as well, because I could ride with people that I really cared about and had really, great conversations with. So I don't really have that here yet because I haven't really made those connections.
Mm-hmm.
So playing team sport is sort of a good substitute for that.
Yeah.
Making friends, meeting some people, and drinking some beer.
Yeah. Sounds great.
Yeah, but I also do a little running also, and we get out and do a little hiking sometimes too. I have not touched the ocean since we moved here like 6 months ago.
It's cold.
It's cold here, and there's sharks in it.
There are some big fish. Have you tried surfing at all?
Not since we moved. I have surfed before. Well, I've paddled out into the ocean on a surfboard before. I don't know if I'd say I've surfed. I've tried.
That's okay. I was very humbled the other day. I tried stand-up surfing in waves for the first time the other day, and I've surfed my entire life, and I could hardly do it. It's great. It's really good to challenge yourself because that's where growth happens.
Definitely.
It's good to stay humble. If you're starting to feel like you're really awesome at something, that's a good sign to maybe make some adjustments, because if you don't figure out how to keep growing, then you're going to get humbled pretty naturally somehow.
Definitely. And stuff like surfing and ice skating, ice hockey, like we were talking about brain development before. The drawback of sports like running and cycling is that it's not really dynamic, right? You don't have to really engage your mind when you're doing it. You're just sort of pedaling in a straight line. So something like surfing, where you have to be agile and your brain has to engage to make you agile, has been shown to have benefits for the long-term health of your brain.
Cool.
So
if anybody's out there is having a hard time making steps towards doing something, just one good thing is just start with a walk.
Yeah.
Get some air, get some blood flowing, and then if you can, reach out to somebody, talk about the things that you've been thinking about, and then who knows, maybe things will snowball into getting some beers, and then maybe an idea hits the table, and then you're working on something.
Yeah, and just, I don't know, have fun, right? Play a game. My brother and I still to this day, like I'm 28, he's 26, I think. We could, take a tennis ball and invent a whole new sport out of it on the beach. Like he came out to hang out. We were actually staying out here a couple of years ago, and he came out to hang out, and we had a tennis ball and a rock on the beach and created our sport out of it. We got hyper competitive, like beating the crap out of each other. But
family's good for that.
Having a good time, like being active, but just enjoying it, like not taking yourself too seriously, just having a good time.
That's key, actually. I get nervous before I do all of these, and I slap myself around a little bit. I make stupid noises, and then I make sure that we get at least a laugh or two, if not even some emotional moments in these conversations. It's really important. You gotta be authentic. It's not always easy. What's that?
Is that emotional? You crying?
It's happened. Not this time. No, I'm okay still.
I think it's a sad story.
What's that?
I'll see if I come up with a sad story.
A sad story, like how many? Let's see, what question? We've got questions here. I should probably ask these instead of hitting you with the ones that we've got here. We've got one that says, why choose biking over other activities? This was from 38 minutes ago, so I'm not sure if Ferris is still with us, but somebody was asking, why biking over other stuff?
So Ferris is is a high school student in Las Vegas. He's one of my old students.
Cool.
Why choose biking over other stuff? I don't know. Sometimes you just get into a groove doing the same thing, I guess. It's not really a good answer, right? But it feels good to be good at something. And I've rode bikes for so long that like I'm all right at it, I guess. And yeah, when you're good at something, it feels, I think that's part of like what we're saying about like consistency of exercising too, right? Like it is cool to challenge yourself to do new things. But if you're doing something where you're just not good at it, it's not going to be as enjoyable as something where you can like feel yourself improving every time you go out and doing it, every time you go out and do it. And I don't know. For me, cycling is just what drew me. But everyone has their thing, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. I had to make shifts in my life because I surfed my whole life, and due to a neck thing that I've been dealing with, I've shifted more towards freediving and stuff like that. So there's a way to figure it out, and it can change too. Got to just find that thing, whatever it is. And if you're
with no air,
yeah, with no, well, I take a big breath before I go down, but I scuba as well.
Wow. How deep can you go?
I've clocked 80 feet. But I'm really not into numbers. I've been doing this for a little while, but it is fun to have those things. And I like to push myself when the circumstances are right, but more than push myself, I like to be comfortable with things like that. And for me, it's that sorry, I keep saying, I guess that's my think word, but
Yeah.
I think it gives me a quick access to the state where I can get really meditative very quickly through freediving. As soon as my body's programmed now to where I get in the water and I'm already in a state where things just shed away really quick. So that's that routine, back to where we started this conversation. And we did have one more question that relates to this. You started a routine, and it was cycling every day. And there's days that it's harder than others, but from what you've discovered is that it basically, it's such a routine now that it probably feels worse if you don't do it.
Yeah, I can't really wrap my head around not doing it. I'm in a difficult spot at the moment because it's like I said, it's been 2.5 years. So I don't know. Inevitably, there's going to have to be an end point, right? And I'm probably going to take that pretty hard because it's such a great streak. But
2.5 years, you've cycled every day for 2.5 years.
Or ran.
Okay.
Ran, most part, yeah. Because you don't always have a bike with you. Like my wife and I went over to England last year, my parents' birthday, and I couldn't bring a bike there, so I ran every day instead. There was one day the first year that I was doing this where I was like, oh, I'm going to work out every day, and I got the stomach flu, and I shuffled 2 miles around the block trying not to like poop my pants.
So there you have it.
Something, like
something. There's no excuse.
Yeah. So, but mostly riding, especially the last year. I forget the number of days, but I rode a lot last year. I rode 16,000 miles, which is the most, even more than I ever did when I was racing too. Just kind of, I don't know, found a groove and had a big trip in the summer where I rode a couple thousand miles in a few weeks and kind of never looked back.
We had some notes here about a race that went from, I mean, those are insane distances. Was this race across the West part of that? Or is this was even further back into, this is not even including that?
Yeah, that's actually back when Andy was still riding bikes, when Andy was still in Vegas. So that was 2014, I think. It's not even that cool of a story. We did this thing called Race Across the West, but a few years previously, Andy and a few of the other guys did something called Race Across America. And that goes from Oceanside, California to Annapolis, Maryland, I think. And they set the speed record for that. They did it in like, do you want to guess? It's unbelievable how fast they did it in.
I mean, I can't even drive across the states in less than 5 days.
They rode their bikes in a relay across the country in like 5 days and something hours, less than 6 days.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. So we did the junior version. We went from, it's called Race Across the West. So it's the first like third or quarter, and it goes from Oceanside to sorry, the dog's editing it, to Durango, Colorado. And it was like 880 miles. And we actually, I think at the time, broke the speed record for that. And we did it in like 1 day and some hours. I forget. We averaged like 20, 21 miles an hour the whole way. I think it's been a while. I forget. But it was a blast. And it was, we did it it was a relay. So we did it in like two people at a time. So myself and this other kid who was kind of my age, Addison, we would go and I would ride for, 20, 30 minutes and he would ride for 20, 30 minutes. And the other one would be in a van kind of following behind or jumping ahead when the other one was riding.
Nice. Yeah.
And in the meantime, Andy and our friend Jerry, who's a cop from Vegas who had never really raced bikes before, done anything like that before. He was our fourth man. They were sleeping in a camper up the road. And then we would switch and Addison and I would sleep and those guys would go and ride through the night, kind of, leapfrogging like that.
Cool.
It's a different kind of effort, man. It's crazy because it's like, I can't imagine those guys doing that for 5 or 6 days across the whole country. But it's 20 minutes, like as hard as you can go for 20 minutes within reason. And then sitting in the car for 20 minutes and, your legs are totally dead because you're sitting down. And then jumping back out there again and doing it again for 20 minutes for like 10 or 11 hours straight. Like the first day we rode from Oceanside to we rode to Blythe to Arizona. So we rode across California in
Jeez, man.
Something. Yeah, that was an adventure.
We're going to run out of time and the feed cuts us off. So I just want to make sure, that we can give away one of these hats. But more important than that really quick, if you could give it a percentage with something like that, how much of it would you say is physical compared to mental?
It's kind of like we talked about before, like the flow thing. There's definitely like the second day, like after I slept in the RV to wake up to go out there, like for my second shift, I felt terrible. But once you get out there and you just start going, you just sort of get into a rhythm of just doing it. I don't really know how to explain it, but it's kind of like with the riding every day thing, right? Like if you just make a habit and just start doing it, then eventually it will just become part of your routine.
Yes. Everybody set a good habit right now. Start one. That's my motivational speech for the end of the show.
How long we got? We're almost out of time.
Yeah, probably, I think 5 minutes. I don't want to cut it off in the middle of like sentimental goodbyes either. So we better, do it right. I want to ask one question, unless you've got one off the top of your head that you would like to ask the crew that's out there listening so we can give away one of these.
If you got anything? Go for it if you got one.
Well, we didn't talk a whole lot about the things that, because there wasn't a whole lot of adjustment that you had to go through as far as going into these last 2 months, as far as significance I don't know. It wasn't a horrible adjustment for you going into these last 2 months, but there was a really cool thing that you were involved with, a really great group of people that you were involved with in, what was the town? Gillespie? Was it? Goleta. So what was the group of people, the kids organization that Matt was working with before going into this pandemic that he's no longer been able to assist with just because of physical proximity? There's no classrooms or anything like that. I gave away a little hint there, but he was working with a group in Goleta that he's no longer been able to help with. I think that's a nice question because that group should probably get a little bit of a special attention right now. They got to figure some things out. It's a tough question. We might have to make it a little easier.
Reading check. It's like when you're in class and you haven't read the book. You haven't really been paying attention.
I mean, it's asking a lot to get somebody to sit down. Oh, man, nailed it.
But,
Brian and Bitter. Do you know who that is?
That's Brian Bitter, yeah. He used to race bikes in Vegas also.
Oh, I was looking for my pen.
Sam, which is also Tony Gebbia, who used to race with us too, also got it after there because he included leafing. But Tony's got a lot of CAN stuff already. So.
Oh, good. That's awesome. So if anybody does want stuff, obviously you can go to the CAN website, spiritofcan.com, and you can buy stuff, but it's not so much about the really cool fresh gear. It's really about the idea behind it. And that's why we're doing these CANversations. So if you want to spread some of that love, wear a shirt. And if somebody asks you what it is that you can do, tell them anything. Just got to set a plan forward. All right. So we've got, make a habit, make some good goals. So we got Brian Bitters and Samantha Wellington. We'll get you guys some gear. Matt, thank you. This has been really cool, man. What are you going to do with the rest of your evening?
My wife actually just got home a minute ago, so I'm gonna walk the dog and I don't know, make some dinner. It's not very exciting, is it? Maybe read one.
It doesn't have to be exciting. I
Yeah.
really, I am like an 8 p.m. lights out kind of person, if not like 9 o'clock at the latest, if I can get through a couple pages in the book.
I'm getting there.
And give it a few years. You're on a great track, man. I'm not that much older than you, but it seems like you've got some great lessons that you've gone through. You've really worked hard, and you're continuing to do so. You're setting a great example. Super cool that you had students checking in with you on here. And anybody else you want to say hi to right now?
Not just everyone. I mean, I kind of was watching down below. I know my dad has been hanging out for a while, and Tony and those guys. So I don't know. I don't want to seem like I know everything. I just have some ideas, and I think if we all get out there and share our ideas, we can maybe put our heads together and make a better world, right?
Yeah, I'm with you, Matt. I think we'll have some ideas to talk about in the future.
For sure. I'd like to do this again if you need me.
Absolutely. Bro, thank you. Have a blessed evening. Enjoy the time with your wife. Is she there now? You generally don't want to stick the wife on camera if they're not prepared for it. I've learned that lesson.
It's not like that at all, dude. She'd be stoked to talk. She's a social worker.
We might have 2 more minutes if you want to just sit her in there to say hello.
Hold on. I think she might be on the phone. You're gonna get a tour of our little house. I'm gonna go listen.
Everybody, this has been Matt Shackley. We've had an incredible conversation, and super, super inspired by some of the things that you've been doing, and looking forward to see what comes in the future for you, bro.
Thanks, man. Yeah, she's busy, but
no worries. Well, look forward to meeting you, hopefully in person soon.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully we can get out to Kauai when this is all over.
All right, man.
All right.
Have an awesome afternoon, evening, and we'll talk to you again soon. Aloha.
Later.